So when I got to the mission field, I had been in the MTC in Provo, and then flew down to Mexico City. And my mission president and the APs, the assistants to the president, picked me up, and it was kind of crazy. The traffic in Mexico is pretty intense, so it was just really kind of scary, a scary experience at first, but you get used to it with the cars whizzing past. Everybody, even though they drive differently down there than we do up here, they seem to know what they're doing at least, so it was kind of funny. We got to the mission office. President had bought some pizzas, and we just talked really quick about what it would be like to serve in this mission. We met our trainers. My trainer was from El Salvador. His name is Elder Jimenez. It was really fun to work with him. I learned a lot about what to do in the mission field and about what not to do, and it was a really, really awesome experience for me. I really, really enjoyed my first area, especially. It was in a place called Valle de Chalco. It's right next to Chalco City. And so in Valle de Chalco, it's kind of a dangerous area. You want to make sure that you're in home before 9 o'clock for sure every night. I was always very protected. I didn't have any trouble with anybody there. There was one time where I got bit by a dog, but that was my own stupid mistake. I walked too close to it without thinking, and it grabbed me, but nothing bad happened. I didn't get rabies or anything, so it was okay. I served from August 2014 to August 2016. I started off my mission in Valle de Chalco, then moved on to a little town called, oh goodness, what's it called? San Pablo de Atlasalpan. And then I went to the actual city, Mexico City, in a state called Mexigualco. My area was called Estación. And then from there I went to Ixtapaluca, and from there I went to another ward in near Amecameca. Amecameca is situated really close to the volcano called Popocatépetl, or the members around there just call it El Popo. And then from there I went to a new area in the mission. During my time there, they changed the mission boundaries, so we shifted a little bit further south towards the state of Morelos, and I served in an area in Cuautla. It was a little town way out there called Tenextepango, and the missionaries hadn't been there for 20 years. So my companion and I, we worked on rebuilding the branch. There used to be a branch there, and when we got there, that branch had just dissolved and formed another part of the bigger ward in the area. And so we were just working on getting that branch built up again. It was a really long project. I was only there for 2 months, or a month and a half actually, and so I didn't get to see that branch built completely, but I did get to meet a lot of the wonderful members there, and have some really amazing experiences in that area. From there, I went to my final area, which was back in Valle de Chalco. I actually finished my mission in the ward right next to the ward where I had started. It was actually in the same building, the Stake Center. And that was really, really special. I was really glad to be back there in that area. I felt really comfortable, really at home, and like I could work really, really hard, and so that was really, really great for me. Down there, the three main religions are the Catholic, the Jehovah's Witness, and the Christian religion. The Christianism down there is very different from up here. Or maybe it's roughly the same, I guess. I hadn't had as much exposure to it before my mission, I guess. But the Catholics were definitely the most prominent, and almost everyone is born into the Catholic Church. When they are born, they're baptized like a week later and confirmed about the same time, and they go with their parents. Oftentimes, you'll find a lot of less active Catholics who go maybe twice a year, maybe. And that's just the culture down there. They don't go to church very often. And so one of the things that we would have to emphasize a lot with the people that we taught and the converts was church retention, was going to church attendance. They just didn't have that kind of a culture, and so even though they were baptized into the church, they would oftentimes they would stop going pretty quickly after, just because it's their culture. They weren't used to going to church very often, and so that was something that we really had to emphasize. Really make sure that they understood and that they were converted to before baptizing them. The Jehovah's Witnesses, they're set up on every corner almost, and they have almost every morning they'll have like their little pamphlets or their books. And it was really interesting talking with them. They have a very, in some aspects, it's a very similar system of beliefs, but in others it's very, very different. And a lot of the missionaries in my mission, they would like to argue and Bible bash with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, if they felt like they were under attack, they were willing to defend themselves. And a lot of missionaries would either feel like they were like the cock of the walk, or they would feel pretty dumb afterwards because they didn't really know what they were talking about yet. And so it was, for me, I liked talking to the Jehovah's Witnesses for the educational aspect. I thought it was interesting to understand what they believed, and to be able to just share beliefs in a more civilized manner. And for the most part, the ones that I talked to in that way, they would sometimes be a little bit pushy, and they might tell you you're wrong a couple of times, but for the most part, they were pretty kind about it and respectful, which I thought was really, really, really awesome. The Christian faith, it was kind of funny at first when I got down there. It was kind of funny. I started saying a prayer during a lesson with a member of a Christian faith, and as I was saying the prayer, they started repeating the words that I was saying, and it kind of freaked me out for a second. But as I went throughout my mission, I began to understand like that's normal. It wasn't like something that just they did it, and so I got used to it. But one of the things that we had to emphasize a lot with the Christian members was faith leading to works, and also a lot about the Book of Mormon. That was one of the pivotal pieces of doctrine that helped them to join the church more, or to feel drawn to the church. So those are the things that we really wanted to emphasize with them. As far as the schedule is concerned, we would wake up 6:30 every morning, work out for a half hour, and get ready and do our studies, and then around 11 or 12 is when we would head out to work. And working down there, it's different from a lot of other missions. There are a lot of different ways to find new investigators, and the most effective, we actually had a 70, Elder Salinas is his name. He came down to our mission and he talked about the most effective ways to find new investigators that eventually get baptized in the church. And he made a list of 10 things. At the very top were references and referrals from active members of the church. Right underneath that was references and referrals from less active members of the church. And then right after that, the third one was the area book. He kept going down the list. The 9th one was street contacts, and the 10th one was knocking doors, attracting. And so one of the things that we did most often in my mission was referrals, area book, and contacts. Those were the 3 ways that we worked most. The goal in the mission was to every day contact at least 20 people, and the main reason for that was not the mission president. Our mission president wanted us to find more new investigators through the means of referrals, and that was also part of one of the goals, was to receive referrals from every single lesson we taught, and to have lessons with members present like easily 50% of the time. However, the reason for the contacts, I believe, was mostly to encourage the missionaries to work hard. If you weren't contacting, that meant that you were wasting time. And so you weren't talking to people about the gospel. You weren't inviting people to come into Christ. And so it was really important that you talk with people, talk with everybody you meet. You're always walking around in my mission, in the Mexico City Chalco mission. You don't have bikes, you don't have a car, and so you have a lot of time, and you have to set up a lot of time in between appointments to get from one appointment to another. And so you would pass a lot of people on the street. And so for that reason, it was really important that you have the courage and that you speak up. You speak up to those people that are just walking around you. So that was a big part of the mission, was street contacts and member referrals and using the area book. As far as the church units around there were 7 stakes. I want to say that's right. Yeah, there were 7 stakes total in my mission. When I got there, it started out as 5, but when we changed the mission boundaries, we shifted a little bit further south and took 3 stakes from the other part of from the new part of the mission, and gave up a stake back to another mission. And then there were, within each stake, there were roughly 8 wards, so it was pretty normal. And then from there, the temple was not in my mission. The temple was in the, I want to say it was in the Mexico City North mission, but I could be wrong. When the temple was actually closed the first half of my mission, but the second half it reopened. We were able to attend the dedication at our stake center, and then after that we went quarterly. I got to go twice on my mission. And that was really, really amazing. The temple there is really beautiful. I want to say it's the third biggest in the world, and it is, or maybe it's the fourth biggest. It's really beautiful. I really loved going through the endowment session in Spanish as well. That was a really awesome experience. It really tested my Spanish too, so that was fun. And there was one area in my mission where it was like almost like a little Mormon colony. There were tons of members. The areas were about 2 streets wide. It was like a mini Utah. But for the most part, you would find areas that were rather spread out. It would be a 30-minute walk from end to end, or maybe even longer. Lots of there would be lots of members in the directory, but often the directories were not up to date, and so sometimes we would go and visit a less active on the directory, and it turns out that they had moved away or that they had passed away years before, and we just didn't know. About every Sunday, generally there was about, in some areas there would be as little as 30 or 50 members attending church every week, and in other areas there would be closer to 120, 200, depending on which area you were in. The housing, for the most part, is the missionaries will just find these little, sometimes they could be just a hole in the wall place that is perfectly suited for missionaries' needs. Just a small bedroom, small study room, and a small kitchen, and a tiny little bathroom. There were some other, the sisters, they got a lot of really, really nice places for the most part. They always had couches in their apartments, and it's really safe, nice areas. But and the elders, we were always roughing it. But I got really lucky. I never had a house that I didn't like in my area, in my mission. I always felt happy and like I had plenty of space for all of my things. The transportation was interesting. They have these little, if you're just trying to get to somewhere close by in your area, but you're kind of running late to an appointment, they had these little carts that were attached to a bicycle or a motorcycle. And these little carts, you would just get in the back and tell the guy where you wanted to go. He would just drive you over there or ride you over there, whatever. And you just pay him a few pesos. It was never very much. And then if you were trying to get from one end of the area to the other, or to like a zone meeting or a district meeting, you would often get on a combi, is what it's called. It was basically just a flushed out Volkswagen van, like flow from Cars. It was just, all the seats were torn out, and they put seats all the way around so that the middle was empty, and you would squish maybe 15 people inside one of those. And it was pretty fun. You got to know the person next to you pretty well. And you would just tell the operator, the driver, wherever you want to get off. Just yell through the little screen in the back, and tell him where you want to get off. Pass your money through a little hole right behind your head, and he'd drop you off there, and you're good to go. When I was in Mexico City, there was, at the time, the metro was broken down, and so they had this bus system called the RTP, the RTP, and it was a free transport throughout the city. You just get on and get off wherever you want. From what I've heard, the metro's been fixed, and so you do have to pay, I think, like 2 pesos or something to get on, but it's not very much at all. They also had buses. They had these smaller buses called micros, and micros were you just hail it down and jump on. Sometimes you would be half in the bus and half out the bus, but and other times you would just be squished, and the person right next to you would be like right there, just breathing down your neck. Those are the types of places that you definitely want to make sure that you keep your wallet in a safe place and you hold your backpack in front of you, because there would be pickpockets that would come around and steal stuff, wallets and purses, and if they could get them, backpacks. So definitely make sure that you hold your backpack, you have a hand in your pocket with your valuables, hold your backpack in front of you. And then they also had these bigger buses for a little bit longer transportation. If you were trying to get in between Chalco and Mexico City, you'd get on a bigger bus. They're like a charter bus, pretty much. The weather down there, it's pretty dry for the most part. For most of the year, it's pretty dry heat. If the sun's out, it just bakes. And it's funny because the air doesn't heat up around it at all. So as soon as a cloud passes over the sun, it'll drop maybe 5 or 10 degrees just immediately. And then once the cloud leaves, then it'll pick right back up. During the winter, it does get kind of cold. I didn't know that before I got there, but luckily my mom sent out some thermal garments, and some sweaters and things, some pajama pants, so that was really useful. You don't need like a big coat or anything, but it was nice to have warm clothes for when I was sleeping, or just some thermal garments for when I was working. I brought, for the most part, short sleeve shirts. I brought like 7 or 8 short sleeve shirts, but I also had about 3 or 4 long sleeve shirts just for the winter time, and also for district and zone meetings, or general mission meetings. You want to have a long sleeve shirt and a suit. During the summer months is when it was the rainy season. Rainy season started about May or June and went until August or September. Generally it was over around August, but if you're in really any area in the mission, gets hit pretty hard by the rain. I was in the city the first time, and it was really intense. The city doesn't have a very good sewage system, and so the streets would get flooded sometimes. And while it was raining, it was almost more like a river than still water. So we would have to run through gross sewage water, and so if it's about to rain, you want to make sure that you're in someone's house before it hits, or at least that you have a really good umbrella and a rain jacket, because the rain gets pretty hard. The second time I was in a more rural area, and it would just get really, really muddy in those areas. So I had these little booties. They were little, to slip over my shoes. They were little, just rain protection, and they were very helpful. They were so useful. So I'd highly recommend those. For our groceries, there were always these little tiny stores. You won't find very many Walmarts or Sam's Clubs down there. There is one Sam's Club, but it's pretty far out, so don't think you're gonna get there very often. You might decide to go a P-Day like once every 6 months, or if you're close by, you can go, and if it's close to your area. But for the most part, you won't find Sam's Club or a Walmart very close. There was a Walmart in Chalco, in the very center of the mission, so that was nice. But for the most part, you're just gonna go to little tiny stores just on the corner. They'll have one called 3B, or there's another one called Neto. I personally preferred Neto over 3B every single time. I felt like they were cheaper and that they had more stuff. But I guess to each his own. In addition to that, they always had little tiny stores on the corner that were just a random guy would just set it up and sell cookies and chips and drinks and like water bottles or like flavored drinks or sodas, or you'd sell like just lots of those little things, snacks. Sometimes they would sell bigger stuff, like there was always a bread shop around the corner, and so that was really good, a little bakery. And they would have sweet rolls and other little cakes and things as well. If you were looking for a really good breakfast, you could always go to the guy selling tamales on the street, and they would often sell them inside a little loaf of bread, and that I thought was really good. In addition to that, they have little shops on the corner to sell meats. I didn't go to those very often. If ever I wanted to buy meat, I would get it from a Walmart or another area like that. Just get some. They would cut it up right in front of you and get you some good lunch meat. So those were I felt they were always a little bit safer. My last 2 transfers of my mission, I was in Chalco, in Valle de Chalco, and there was a Little Caesars they had just built, so we went to Little Caesars almost every Monday. And that was always really good because it was really cheap, and we would always have leftovers. The crime there, there are lots of little gangs that will run around. You definitely want to make sure that you're home before 9 o'clock in almost any area, especially the ones that don't have very much light, like in Valle de Chalco. And I always carried around a 50 peso bill if I needed to go somewhere for transportation purposes, or if I ever got stood up. Sometimes people would just come up to you and tell you to give them their stuff. They didn't have a knife, they didn't have a gun all the time. There were a couple times where I never got stood up. I was very protected, and I went my whole mission without getting robbed once. I had a couple companions and friends in my mission, though, that would get stood up by guys with knives or a guy with a gun. And they would just have to be really careful, give them whatever they wanted, and don't fight them about it. It wasn't very common that it happened, but it did happen. A lot of the common jobs in the area, like I said, there will be people that just set up their own little shop and sell snacks. There were also they were these tiny little Office Depot places where they would just sell like paper or just school supplies, basically. There were people that had set up their own little dry cleaner. There were people that had their own little taco stand, their repair shop. that sort of thing. They would just have little tiny shops on the corner in the middle of the street. They just rented the space and sold their own stuff. Inside my mission, or right next to my mission, I guess, was the volcano, El Popocatépetl. You didn't want to go up that very often. I'd heard a couple times of missionaries being robbed and losing their cameras, which was really sad. But there was one time where we went up with my mission president and the zone leaders and the assistants to the president as well. And we had a really awesome meeting up there. There is also an area, a little spot, not inside the mission. You'd have to get permission from your president. But there are the pyramids. It's called Teotihuacan. I highly recommend you go. If you go early in the morning, if you get there around 8 or so, 8 or 9, there are always a whole bunch of people giving tours, and there's a member down there who gives tours, Book of Mormon tours, he calls them. And he gives some insight into the pyramids and how, and his theory about how they were temples, and it was really, really interesting. I highly recommend that you go down there. It doesn't cost very much. It does cost a little. It's about, I think for the missionaries, he does a deal and he cuts it maybe in half or so. So definitely go at least once. As far as the culture is concerned, the culture is really centered around the Catholic religion. Religion and culture are very much intertwined, and for that reason, you would see a lot of people throw big parties when their kid got baptized, or they would throw these big parties in the quinceañeras. They called them quince años down there. They would throw big parties for really any occasion that permitted it. They're very much a party culture. And that was always fun. There were a couple of times where it was somewhat annoying because they would play their music very loud. But for the most part, it was really just a fun thing to see. Members would invite you to parties, and we never stayed, but we would visit. We would drop by and grab some food and see if there were any non-members around that we could talk to. They're very, like I said, since their culture is so centered, their culture and religion are so intertwined. Around Christmas time, there would be lots of people, especially of the Catholic religion, that would go to church, and they would sell this bread, this special bread, that would go around, and they would have these little dolls, these tiny little dolls inside the bread, that if you got one of the dolls, then in 2 months you would have to make tamales for everybody. And it was kind of a funny joke. I got the doll a couple times, and luckily they transferred me out of the area before I had to make anybody tamales, because I have no idea how to make tamales. But it was pretty fun. They also celebrated Dia de los Muertos at the beginning of November, and that was really cool. That was a really cool celebration. There would just be lots of people dressed up like Halloween, and people would honor their ancestors, and that was a really cool aspect of the culture. During Easter, the Sunday before Easter was Palm Sunday, and so a lot of the the members of the Catholic Church would get palm branches and bring them to the church, which was also pretty cool to see. Chalco is known for being one of the first areas in Mexico City that received the church. There are a couple spots. One of the areas that I went to, actually, San Pablo Atlasalpan, that little town has a lot of church history. There were a couple families down there who were some of the first members of the church in Chalco. And so that was also incredibly interesting to talk with him about the history of the church there, and how much it's grown since. The food there, the best foods were definitely the tacos. They had these little taco stands out in the street. Before you go to any taco stand, make sure you ask the members, many members, as many members as you can, which taco stands are good. Because there were some times that instead of feeding pig meat, the taco vendors will slip in dog meat, and it would make you really, really sick. So make sure you ask around for which taco stands are the best, and go to those ones so that you don't get sick. As long as you go to those ones, you should be fine. They are really, really good, and I highly recommend that you try some of the tacos al pastor. They're a little, it's from the thigh, I want to say, of the pig, the meat from the thigh, and they would throw pineapple on it, and onion, and cilantro, and you could throw on your salsa, and you were good to go. They're these little tiny things. They're about that big. It's not big at all, but you'd get 5 of them, and you'd be pretty full. They love spicy food in Mexico. They will throw spice onto anything, and I'm serious when I say anything. They'll throw spice on their fruit, on their candy, on anything else. So be prepared for that. They don't have very many sour candies, and instead of those, they just replace them with spicy candy. They would also, there weren't very many burritos. You're not going to find very many burritos down there. That's more towards the north. But the tacos are excellent. They also serve a dish called chicharrón, which is pigskin. Dry, it was okay. But oftentimes they would soak it in a green salsa. And so it had the same kind of consistency of, I'm actually not even sure how to describe it. It would just kind of slide down your throat and didn't taste very good to me. There were some of the missionaries that loved chicharrón, but I didn't like it very much. One of the traditional dishes down there is pozole. It's this inflated corn. It's a white corn that they soak in a soup, and it's actually one of the main dishes for Christmas time and Independence Day, Mexican Independence, which is September 16th. And I really, really enjoyed that. Oftentimes they would throw in chicken strips, or not chicken strips, shredded chicken, and that was really good. Sometimes some of the members like to throw in pig head, which was not so enjoyable, but you'd always find, for the most part, it was just shredded chicken, and it was really, really delicious. They also have lots of really yummy snacks. They have these, the main bread brand down there is Bimbo, and they sell these just really good sweetbreads and that sort of thing. My favorite one was called Nitos. It used to be called El Negrito, but people got offended, and so they started calling them Nitos. It's just really what it is they've sealed off a hot dog bun and pumped it full of chocolate, and then had chocolate icing on top. That's all it was. But if you got those with, I like to eat them hot or cold. Just heat it up in a microwave or eat it straight from the wrapper or straight from the store, and I thought it was really good. They had lots of fruit bars and little candies that were a lot of fun. So I highly recommend that you get some of those. One of the things down there that I was kind of sad about is they don't really celebrate Thanksgiving very much. And so you want to, there are sometimes members in the wards that love to celebrate Thanksgiving just because, like I said, it's an excuse to throw a big celebration. So look for them because they'll have some really good food. As far as desserts are concerned, there are always people in the streets that are selling donuts or empanadas, which are all really good. And there'll be people selling flan. It was this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like a Jell-O. I really liked that. And I had talked about the tamales. I would usually get those in the morning. My last area, there was a tamale stand. Probably the best tamales I'd tried my entire mission. The area is called Zapata. It's in Valle de Chalco in the Solidaridad stake. And so these tamales, they were different from the rest of them. They would sell raspberry cheesecake tamales. They would sell orange-flavored tamales, lemon-flavored tamales, arroz con leche tamales, chocolate tamales, all sorts of things. That was the best stand by far. For the most part, the tamales were, they would have 4 different flavors. They would have tamales verdes, which is just green salsa tamales. They're kind of a milder, spicy ones. Tamales de rajas, which is a spicier one. They had a lot of chili peppers stuck in there. Tamale de mole. Mole was a very interesting dish where they would grind up a whole bunch of different condiments, just like tons of different things, different types of peppers, chocolate beans, dried fruits and vegetables, etc. They would grind it all up and soak it and create this kind of sauce that they would put on top of chicken and rice and other things. And so they would have tamales that flavor. There were 2 different kinds of moles for the most part. Generally, they would either be mole verde or mole roja, which the verde, when I got there, I really liked mole verde. It was really good. And it took me a while to get used to mole roja, but after a while, I started to enjoy that a lot as well. And then the 4th type of tamale was tamales dulces, which is just like a strawberry flavored tamale. Sometimes they would put little raisins in it, and I didn't like that very much. And sometimes they would sell tamales, pineapple flavored tamales, which I also didn't like very much, but I mean, to each his own. And they also sold a lot of elotes. Elotes are it's just corn on the cob, and they would put mayonnaise and cheese and a little bit of chili spice, like a dust almost. It was really, really good. And then they would also sell these plantains, fried plantains. A lot of missionaries really loved them. I thought it tasted fine, but personally it made me really sick to my stomach after I ate them. It just fell in my stomach very heavy. And so I couldn't eat them very much. But a lot of missionaries really liked those. As far as the language is concerned, it took me about 3 months to learn enough to communicate well, to be able to understand most anything and say most anything I wanted. I had taken 5 years of Spanish in high school and middle school, so I had a rough idea of what to do. But the best training was definitely just getting out there and speaking. It didn't matter what you said. It matters what you say, but it didn't matter what you said as far as learning the language, because you would learn. With my trainer, he didn't speak English very well, and so with him, I would just ask him, I would just point to an object and say, "What's that?" And he would tell me the name for it, and I would tell him the English name. And we would do that all day, every single day. And eventually I started to learn things. And if I forgot a name of something and I didn't have it around to point, I would say the English name, and he might remember and tell me what the Spanish name was. Whenever I was describing something, I would never describe it in English. I would use any word in Spanish that I could to describe whatever object I was thinking in Spanish. And that was very helpful. Also studying my scriptures side by side, English and Spanish, like in the movie The Other Side of Heaven, that was very useful. It helped me out a lot, and I highly recommend you do that. And just asking questions. Asking questions was, the members down there and the missionaries down there understand that you don't know that you don't know Spanish very well. And so they will, for the most part, I never had anybody make fun of me or get angry at me about it. People would tease, but they would never make me angry or get angry at me about it. As far as for pronunciation tips, literally just pronounce every single syllable as if it was just that letter. So, for example, a longer word, which might be kind of scary to people, is spelled Tintoreria, and it's pronounced tintoreria, which is kind of a tongue twister, but when you look at it, you just split it up into each syllable and pronounce it exactly as if it was just that syllable. So, for example, it starts T-I, so that would be T, and then, or T-I-N, sorry. It starts out T-I-N, so you would pronounce it tin, T-O-R, tor, and then E-R, rer, I-A, ia, tintoreria. And that's it. It was really, once you learn how to do that, your pronunciation can shoot up. Counting, pretty much everybody knows how to count to 10 in Spanish. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then to 20, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And that's it. It was really simple. Some LDS vocab. You'll want to know how to say gospel. It's just evangelio. You want to know how to say church. It's just iglesia. Sorry, iglesia. A member is miembro. Don't say miembra for a girl member. So that is not girl member. Girl members are also miembro. Miembra is talking, it's like saying she's my girl, not a member. So be careful with that. My dad once made a mistake. He served in Guatemala, and my dad once made a mistake when talking about carrots. He wanted a carrot, and so he told his sister that he said, I just want a cenoura. Cenoura is, in Spanish, it's pretty close to woman. And so he told his sister, I just really want a cenoura. I want a big one, and I want it now. And the sister freaked out. She got really scared and was like, Elder Connor, you're a missionary. And he was like, yeah, missionaries can have carrots. That's fine. And he figured it out pretty quick. He described it to her, like bunnies like it. It's orange. And she's like, oh, you mean a zanahoria. And so they had a good laugh. Don't worry about making little mistakes like that. They're funny. They're great stories. And people will laugh about it and they'll get over it. So I highly recommend that you don't get offended if you make a mistake like that, because people will just think it's funny and they'll move on. Some crazy stories. A lot of the Mexican culture revolves around what they call machismo, which is, I don't even remember the word in English. Basically just that the man is in charge, and that women are subservient to the men. That kind of culture has started to decline a lot. Women have begun to be more independent and take more charge of themselves, which is a good thing for that culture specifically. Just making sure that these women feel that they could respect themselves. That's the main point of it. There was, as a result of that culture, though, a lot of the non-member men will. It's really sad to see them cheat on their wives or go and get drunk. And I shouldn't say a lot. You'll see that in most areas, though. You want to be really careful of drunks and drug addicts. For example, there was one time where there was a drug addict in my area who, if he saw us there was this one time he saw us and he started chasing us. And he had a rock in his hand. And so we ran to a member's house. We kind of turned the corner, ducked into their house, and he lost us. And the next day he wasn't high anymore, and so he came up to us and apologized. But you want to be really careful around drug addicts and drunks, because you never know what they'll do. My mission, there isn't really very much wildlife, per se. A lot of it's just the city. There was one time where I was in a more rural area. We were walking out in the fields. A lot of people work in the fields, as it's a job in a lot of rural areas just because people are poor, and they don't have another way to really get an education, so they farm. And one time we were walking around in the fields, and all of a sudden my companion was about to step, and as he was about to step, he saw a snake, and it was a big snake. It was easily 4 or 5 feet long, and so he almost stepped on it. He jumped over it, and it was fine. It just kind of coiled up and it kind of hit itself, and that was pretty crazy. But I didn't see very many snakes, There weren't very many scorpions in my mission either. I did see one, um, but it was really tiny, nothing too exciting. You want to make sure that you keep your house pretty clean, just because there are lots of bed bugs, and if you are dirty, then you'll get bed bugs. I never had bed bugs, so I was pretty lucky. But yeah, for the most part, the wildlife, there were lots of mosquitoes, but there wasn't very much else to the wildlife down there. As far as spiritual stories, there were always opportunities. While you're on your mission, there are always opportunities to feel the Spirit and to project that to others. As long as you're living worthy and as long as you're obeying the rules, you will have spiritual experiences that will bless your life and the lives of those around you. There was this one time where it was towards the beginning of my mission, actually. I didn't speak Spanish very well, but we went into a member's house, and they were concerned about their family. They just weren't. It wasn't a very peaceful situation. It was a mother and her 2 children. They were both teenagers, and the boy had just been ordained a priest. He was very good about going to church, and he loved church. And his sister and his mother, they had a harder time going to church. And so they were very concerned about the peace in their family. They just didn't feel like they were getting along very well. And my companion and I felt impressed to bless the home. And we did so with their family. And it was incredible, the spirit that just flooded the room after we said that prayer. None of us could hold back the tears, and we all just felt so happy and joyful to be with each other. So that was a pretty common thing that we would do. We would bless homes pretty often, just because a lot of members down there don't do it. They haven't blessed their home. Because of the culture down there, people will talk to you about a lot of spiritual experiences that are not necessarily uplifting spiritual experiences. And so you'd always have to be on the lookout for if people started telling you about those sorts of things, about just them sensing an evil presence in their home. If you heard that, you'd want to bless the home then. Or maybe if the father wasn't around and he was a worthy priesthood holder, to wait until he got back. But the point is, you always had to strive to be worthy, as in any other mission, so that you would be ready to give blessings and bless homes and preach the gospel correctly and according to the needs that they had in the Spirit that accompanied you. When I was deciding to go on a mission, there was the age change. Just recently it had occurred, and so I decided to serve at 18. And for me, I was really glad that I had went right after high school. My brother, he actually just got his mission call to the London, England South mission. He just reported to the MTC this past week. And he decided to, before his mission, he decided to go to college. And for him, that was exactly what he needed. However, or whenever you decide to go, or if you're still debating whether or not to go, for me, it has blessed my life immeasurably. I've never, ever, even since I got into the field, I've never, ever felt a desire to leave my mission or wish that I had never gone. I've always been so grateful for that opportunity to dedicate myself to to Christ and to our Father, and to serve the children of Mexico. Were it not for the cultural experience or for the language, the spiritual aspect of it strengthened me so much and helped me to draw so much closer to my Father in heaven. So for anybody that is thinking about going on a mission and is unsure, or for anybody that is worrying about serving their mission in Mexico City, I encourage you to have the faith to at least pray about it and to seek an answer. I'm sure you're doing so. And as you're praying, to listen. I know for a fact that God wants us to serve His children, and that as we do so, we will bless them and we will be blessed. Elder Holland has a really amazing talk. It's my favorite talk ever. It's called The Miracle of a Mission, and I highly recommend to anybody that they read it, that they study it, that they ponder it. In it, he says, everything that I have in my life, everything including my education, my family, my wife, my job, my calling, everything I owe to my mission. I owe to the service that the time that I spent in that service, in God's service. And he goes on to say, were it not for my mission, I would not have received these blessings. And the same goes for me. Right now I'm a student at BYU. I'm about to get engaged to the woman that I love, and I would not be able to have those blessings were it not for my mission and the service that I gave. I was not the best missionary. I was not a missionary that went and baptized thousands of people, or even hundreds, or even tens of people. I was simply in the service. I loved every minute of it. It was hard. And it was hard not for the reason that you might think. For me, it was hard because it required me to change. It forced me to be different, to change who I had been. I was not a terrible person before. I wasn't running around sinning all the time or doing all these terrible things. But I was not yet the man that God wanted me to be. I had not reached my full potential, and I'm still on that road. On my mission, I learned how to walk that path. And so that was what made it hard, but it's also what made it worth every minute. I testify that I know that this work is true. I know that the church is true. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet, and that through him, God restored the church, the true church today. I know that because I have read the Book of Mormon. I have applied its teachings to my life, and I have felt and seen that it has blessed me. I promise to anyone considering a mission or going to serve that as you serve, that you will be blessed beyond measure. Your family will be blessed beyond measure. That you will be able to have the Spirit with you, and that you will be able to feel your Father's love for yourself and for those around you. And that is what a mission is all about. It's about love. As we go and serve and love the people around us, as we love our companions, as we love our leaders, as we love our families and our friends, and as we love God, we will be able to feel that happiness and that joy that comes from knowing that we have a Savior who has come and who has atoned for us, and that through him we can return to our Heavenly Father and live with our families forever. I know that these things are true. and a mission has only cemented that in my mind and in my heart.